each one is doing. I'm going to give them each just about 2 minutes or so to say what they're doing. I'll probably intro a little bit, but I'll also give a fun fact. So please welcome our first David, and he's going to say 2 minutes about what he's doing. So David is CEO of Optina. This is a company we have invested in. He can identify the existence of Alzheimer's 8 to 10 years prior to the onset of dementia. Very exciting. Fun fact about David. Oh, he skateboards every night. He's a very cool guy. Welcome, David.
I have 2 minutes.
Yeah, you have 2 minutes to talk about what you do.
Okay, so today, if you feel that you suffer from memory loss, you're going to start a process that will last from 3 to 7 years to find out the cause of your memory loss. 75% of you that are concerned will end up with, just normal concern regarding aging. 25% will be on the side where you either suffering from a terrible disease like Alzheimer or have disease like have cures that you can act on. Actually, even Alzheimer's disease have shown that you can act on it and really delay the symptoms of the disease. So what we're trying to do is change from that 3 to 7 years time to find out what's the cause of memory loss and do that in one doctor's visit. So really from that early standpoint, you can start having a care path and act on your disease. So we've developed a technology that looks at the back of your eyes and look for digital biomarker that correlates with brain change that happen early on in the disease progression. So we're looking for amyloid protein, we're looking for vascular changes, we're looking for different changes that correlate with brain changes. And we've received an FDA breakthrough designation. We're installed in multiple clinics around the US and are starting to offer our service to pharma and early adopters in the healthcare system.
Thank you, David. It's actually a very 1 second eye scan. Very cool. Why don't you have a first seat at the first chair right there? Next, I'm going to introduce our second CEO, Karen Drexler of Sandstone Diagnostics. Fun fact about Karen: she loves to skate, and she's on a synchronized ice skating team. How excellent! So it must be entrepreneurial genes that has skating in it. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, I'm here to talk to you about our Sandstone's technology and our first product. So Sandstone is a company that was founded based on work at Sandia National Labs, developing a portable centrifuge that's as powerful as a lab centrifuge. Centrifuges are great, separating out different things by density, by other mechanisms. Our first product is actually a consumer product in the telehealth space, and it is a home male fertility test. So Anne mentioned Femtech earlier, and there are hundreds of products now that are geared at women and fertility. There's basically nothing for men and fertility. It's a white space. So the idea here is, if you look at the market, one in 6 couples now struggles with infertility. Those numbers go up all the time. And over the past 40 years, there's been a 52% drop in average sperm count. So male fertility is plummeting. We've got all these infertile couples, and yet everything in the market of fertility is geared at women. So what we want to do with our technology here is give couples a tool that they can use at home for men to assess their fertility status from the privacy of home, because going in and talking to a doctor about fertility status can be pretty uncomfortable for guys. And what's really important is that most people don't realize that lifestyle plays a huge role in male fertility. So there are numerous things that men can do to improve their fertility in a pretty short time frame, often 1 to 3 months. So our digital health solution, we not only have the test, but we've got a companion app, we've got other educational tools that help men understand, basically do an inventory of their health and habits, understand where there may be room for improvement for them personally, and then give them the tools to track and trend over time to help the couple optimize their chances of fertility.
Thank you.
And just something to leave you to think about, our website is called don'tcookyourballs.com. So maybe you'll remember that. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I figured this would be a little entertaining for you. Our next panelist is a good friend of mine, Jonathan Norris. He's with Silicon Valley Bank. And a fun fact about him, he played baseball in college, and he was a pitcher. Thank you, John.
Great. Thanks so much. Just a little bit about Silicon Valley Bank. I know a lot of folks probably know what we do, but just as a broad overview, You know, we're a bank that just looks to work with companies in the technology and healthcare space that have some sort of secret sauce behind their company. And so we work with a company from idea on a napkin all the way up through, you know, lots of revenues, public companies. We have offices all over the US. We have an office in London. We have an office, 3 offices in China. We have an office in Israel. And we're just expanding into Canada now. And so I run the healthcare venture group. So I help work with all the healthcare venture folks that are out there. And then I write an article twice a year that gets published. It really goes into the financing trends in venture healthcare. So that's medical device, tools and diagnostics, and biopharma. And we actually have something coming out on digital health the end of this year. But it's financing trends and then what's going on in M&A and IPO. So if you're looking for information on how much money is going into your sector, what evaluations look like, what are the comps on the exit side, you should check it out. And it's free. It's on our website too.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's very informative. Thank you, John. I love that. I look forward to that twice a year. I should also mention Silicon Valley Bank also sometimes invests in different companies through a different part of the bank, so it's always good to know. So my last panelist here is Uli Chettipally. Did I pronounce that right, Uli? Okay, great. Thank you. So I love this fun fact because I played drums in school too. His first job was as a drummer in a rock band. Why did you leave, Uli? Why did you leave? Welcome.
They were paying too little.
Yeah, musicians are not compensated too well.
I know.
Welcome.
But looks like I need all these three services right now. My name is Uli Chettipally. I'm an emergency physician and also a researcher. Recently, I got out of Kaiser Permanente, where I've been working there for about 27 years. My main role here is I run a group called Society of Physician Entrepreneurs. We are a large international group, about 30,000 members online, about 30 plus chapters, mostly in the US. I run the San Francisco Bay Area chapter. We meet once a month on the 3rd Thursday. Our next meeting is on October 17th at Plug and Play. So look up on Eventbrite and please come. Everybody's welcome. You don't have to be a physician. We bring in startups, we bring in experts in the field, and there's a lot of interaction that goes on, a lot of networking. And we want the physicians to feel comfortable engaging with startups, understanding startups, and maybe starting their own company. But we do have investors, we do have startups, obviously, business people, all kinds of the whole ecosystem there.
Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm going to start this really exciting and fun panel with a quick question. So everybody, when an entrepreneur is starting a company, of course, we all need funding. That's like probably our biggest challenge, right? But starting with the 2 entrepreneurs, and then from the standpoint of Uli, your role with working with startups, and John, from your role of the startups that you have conversations with, what keeps you up at night? What's your biggest problem? What do you need help with? Start on the end. David.
I mean, it all come down to the business model, building a viable business model, validating the model. So what keeps me at night, what keeps us, our company at night, is meeting with customer, meeting with patient, meeting with eye clinics, making sure that we can generate the flow of patient that supports our innovation. So this is what keeps me up at night.
So creating those relationships, eye clinics, yes. And customers and relationships with healthcare companies. Good, thank you. Karen?
Thank you. For us, it really has been funding. Yeah. So Anne talked about the different factors that investors look for, and we've got a lot of really wonderful metrics around the company. What we don't have is an existing market. So the home male fertility market just really doesn't exist yet. As best we can tell, it's a $5 or $6 million market in total because the only products that are out there have been launched in the last couple of years. Right? So we have a lot of market potential, but we don't have an existing market. And getting investors comfortable with something that has a huge potential, but we can't point to, this is how many products are being sold, this is what the dollar value of this market is today, that has been a huge obstacle. So we've actually decided as a company to focus our energies on partnering with people who already have market access, as opposed to building our own access to the market. So working with people who are in women's health and men's health and the fertility space broadly, who already are talking to couples who are looking for fertility solutions, is we've not been able to access the funding for us to go directly to the market with our product.
So if you focused on curating customers through relationships, would you also say that maybe your biggest thing that keeps you up at night is information, is informing the public? Because the more they know how much they might need you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Education and awareness are
Education, yeah.
huge challenges. And although, as I mentioned, 50% of infertility cases involve the male partner, it's been drummed into women that if they're over 30, they're subfertile. And so men and women both believe that if a couple's not getting pregnant right away, it's going to be the woman's fault. And getting couples, both men and women, aware that men play a big role in this, it takes two to tango, right, definitely has been challenging.
Yeah, that blew me away, the statistics of half the issues, it's half and half. John?
Yeah, a couple things, both sort of revolving around the financing side. I think, you know, the first thing that we tend to talk to a lot of companies about is, you know, do you have a big enough market for your product that you are quote unquote venture fundable? And so that's always a discussion, and you know, I think venture fundable now, you need to expand your horizons a little bit, because it's not just the venture folks that are out there. There are groups of angels. I think the one really interesting trend that we're seeing are family offices getting very involved in looking at you know, digital health. But you know, within that, I think that the second point is you really need to do your research when you're going to engage with investors. You know, understand, you know, how they invest. You know, what's their thesis? What does their portfolio company look like? Who are the partners that you're engaging with? Because it's interesting when we talk to a lot of the companies that, you know, give me a list of, oh, I want to talk to, you know, here's a list of 6 VCs. They all have $500 million funds and they're looking for $1 million. It's like, you know, you have to understand within the context of how these investors are working, how much money they're looking to deploy. So I think it's great to have an approach, but the approach should not be a shotgun approach. It should be, you know, you should do your homework and have a group of investors that you think are fits to you. And you know, that's what we're here for at SVB. We're happy to have those discussions to help you, you know, define what type of folks you want to engage with. But you know, don't just do the shotgun approach, and make sure you understand sort of how these investors are approaching deploying their own capital, because that's just going to really make your time a lot more valuable. And there's nothing worse than engaging with an investor or trying to engage with an investor that in the end has no interest in funding that particular either size of investment or indication or area.
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, all we have is our time. And our time is the most valuable asset. You have to be out there getting customers, working on your product, getting your patents. And if you're, you know, there's a lot of people who take a meeting. But if you can, so that's one of the challenges, of course, is getting the intel, right? Because you can look on a website, it doesn't say, you know, how much they're investing, what they're looking for. So relationships help a lot. And there's a couple software, I think, platforms as well, right?
Yeah, and my paper, I look at all 3 sectors, biopharma, medical device, and tools and diagnostics. I list out all the active investors that have done the most new deals in the last 12 to 24 months. That's a great place to start, but then it's research those investors, because they're all very different. You know, somebody can do 10 investments, somebody, you know, as same as another investor, one folk might be deploying $25 million checks, and one might be deploying $250,000. So, you know, do your homework, but that's one place to start.
Uli?
Sure. Our challenges, you know, being a nonprofit is, number one, you know, how do you reach out, you know, mainly communications and getting the word out. Physicians are, you know, getting burnt out. You know, we know that, you know, they work very hard. They'll work long hours, and then for them to take time off and to actually come to a meeting is very hard. So the first thing is, you know, educating them and getting the word out. That's a big challenge for us. The second challenge is, of course, sponsorships. You know, we need to be able to host people and at least give them a dinner. We're lucky that we found several places which give us their space. For example, Plug and Play is a great place. They provide us with the space and the equipment. But you know, you need more than that, you know, just to be able to grow and to be able to get the word out. One of the things we are doing is, we're doing a global conference in January. This is January 11th and 12th. And so we are actively looking for sponsors and looking for, startups to present there. And this is going to be, this will tie in with the big conference that happens in San Francisco, JP Morgan. And UCSF has granted us some beautiful space in their new campus. So I want you guys to be aware of that, and also please participate.
Thank you. Thank you. So I've got a few questions, but I think there might be one or two people from the audience that have a burning question. We got a burning question for me. I'm going to start. You asked before, so let me, and I didn't get to you on the last panel, so let me come on here first.
Hi, Gary Goldman, and I know a bunch of these people. I'm a physician also. I'm taking it from a different perspective, my question. So I've worn every operator hat there can be in healthcare, and now I started a venture capital fund which is completely physician investors, okay? And we're creating a network because there is no place where a venture capitalist or an entrepreneur who has an idea like an infertility company can go to somewhere and go talk to 50 urologists who focus on infertility. So my question to the panel and to the previous panel is, there's a lot of talk about what we do to identify the best company, but I truly believe that in order to avoid the next Theranos, that we really have to figure out a way to actively engage the individuals, the clinicians that are actually going to be using this technology and are on the other side of it. Uli knows this, as well as I do. So what are you doing to actively engage clinicians as you make your due diligence decisions? Because we're very good at making due diligence on the business, the financial, the business development, marketing, and sales projections. But at the end of the day, that's worthless in healthcare unless the actual users of the healthcare are buying into it.
Thank you. So let's start with David. What clinicians are you working with, and how are you answering that question for venture investors?
So from the beginning, our first pre-seed and seed investor were ophthalmologists and neurologists. So from the get-go, I had to validate that other people thought my idea was good. So we raised from them, and then we raised from pharma grants. So we went and pitched to pharma and got pharma grants to develop the product. So from the get-go, only at the Series A, we're getting investors. So the first two rounds were private money that knew the space. Now we're rapidly engaging with our eye clinics that are going to deliver the product. We're still finalizing the FDA approval, but we are in clinics, we are talking to patients, we're running survey, we're interacting with and setting up all the eye clinic that will be our rollout in the next year, 2 years. So really making sure that we're close to the market and that we can learn the flow of patient and learn from our future customer.
Thank you, David. Karen? That's a tough one for you because there is not necessarily a validator.
Well,
given no
we
market.
did go to the urology community.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So very early on, as soon as we identified the product space, we went to the guy who's the head of men's health at men's reproductive health at Stanford, and he's our lead medical advisor. He's been the reviewer on the content on our website and on our app to make sure that everything is scientifically grounded. One of the problems in this space is that there's so much misinformation out there. We wanted to make sure we had good backup and had reliable people to review all of our content. We've got a high-powered advisory board that are members of the American Urology Association subsection on reproductive medicine. The difficulty for us is that young men don't go to see urologists. So we get great support from the urologists, but they don't help us in terms of the commercial rollout of the product since we're selling to consumers. And that validation has actually been largely discarded by the investors. So we did, I think, a great job of getting the validation, getting the support of the community, but since they're not in the purchase path for the product, it just hasn't done much for us.
Yeah, that's one of the most important pieces for us as investors is validation. Ann spoke about that earlier. Does it work? Do you have validation? We also look at, what institutions are you working with? Is it somewhere that we know the quality of professionals there is really top notch?
Yeah, I was just going to say really quickly, when I meet with early stage entrepreneurs, that is really one of the first focuses. I say, well, what's the experience set of the C-suite? And then do they have advisors that are super understanding of the area in which they're trying to get? And I think it's, typically on the device side, it ends up working out pretty well with mostly it's device folks that are looking to do devices. But one area that's super interesting that we're seeing as a trend is really the sort of AI ML space in hard life sciences. So these are like drug discovery services companies and then folks who are actually on the diagnostic side. What we see very interestingly is that it's a tech focused folks who are trying to develop an algorithm getting funded by generalist investors at actually valuations that tend to be a little bit aggressive. And it's very interesting out there, and we'll see where things go. There are going to be some huge wins there, I really do believe, but I think there's going to be a lot of companies that are really going to struggle, because when I do look at the overall balance, it's all tech focused, and the folks maybe don't understand. It's more like, oh, if you solve something important in a huge market, you'll get there, and that's fine, and we're willing to take we're willing to go early in that. But I think they don't quite understand how difficult it is to navigate the regulatory system and reimbursement, especially on the diagnostic side. So it's just, when we look at that, we like to bank all companies, but then we also lend to companies. And so when we look at lending, that is a big, we look at that quite a bit, because in the end, what's going to pay us back is them raising their next round. And so it's certainly an important thing that we look at.
And that is one reason why your lawyer and your bank, and especially in some law firms, invest in your companies as well. If your law firm is investing in your company, that's something you want to mention. Your bank, et cetera. Uli, you want to share something on that?
Yeah. So, again, a lot of companies are coming from the consumer side, right? So, what a doctor would say would work is very different from what a consumer would say would work, or would they use it. So ideally, I think you've done a great job of getting the doctors to look at, okay, what we are doing and what we are saying, is this appropriate? Is this the right material to be able to give to consumers? But after that, I think, if you're doing a consumer company, obviously you have to go to the consumers and see how the market is and how the adoption is and what do the consumers think. But when it comes to enterprise software or enterprise things, then doctors are good to know that they will use the product. But then you're not selling to doctors most of the time. You're selling to the hospital or the health plan or the doctor's group. So again, you have to find out who is actually going to buy your product. And based on that, you need to focus on that area. But as a general rule, it's a good idea to check in with the doctors first.
I think that's actually a really great point, and something when I do my guest lecturing and mentoring at Stanford, I emphasize, which is, who is your customer, right? Who is your customer? Some say, well, I have both sides. You know what? 9 times out of 10, you got to choose, because your message has to be tailored to that person. When we started our fund, we said we're going to help doctors make better decisions. We're not trying to market to the consumer. Some of our investments will have a direct-to-consumer application, but we really want to help a doctor make a better decision, because if a doctor really needs it, it's a burning problem, it's probably going to find a way to get paid, right? So that's how you got to think. You had a question over here. Yeah.
This is a very fundamental question. I've had a telehealth business for about 20 years, and we've had pretty steady growth, and I think it's very scalable. I have control, but I've never really understood why you would want to take on investors if you're doing well, because you lose control. But what are some of the criteria that you've used? Why would you be interested in taking on investors?
It's a great question. What does capital do for you that you can't do without it?
For us, it was a decision from the start. We said we want to build a VSee company that will have a rapid ramp up, because there's a large need. For me, when I meet other entrepreneurs that's starting a business and they're trying to figure out what type of business they want to build, and that really drives what type of financing you're doing. So my goal was to change the way we manage and diagnose a patient with memory problem. So I had to go to a VC approach to be able to to survive the long product cycle development and attack the large market. But if your business and your vision doesn't require that type of financing, then obviously there's other way. That's how I feel.
Yeah, we differentiate between lifestyle and venture-funded businesses. Lifestyle is supporting your lifestyle. It's a great business. You make money, you grow. It's wonderful. A venture model is a scalable model, and it's a model that requires capital to get to scale.
And our business, we produce hardware. So we've got a centrifuge, we've got disposable microfluidic chips, we have to build a lab. We had significant capital that we needed up front to even be able to do the work to build our product. And that wasn't something that we could self-fund. So there was really no choice but to bring in outside capital if we wanted to build a business.
And then I'll just add two other things, open doors that you might not be able to open on your own, and drive to exit, and understanding how to get to exit and what that exit looks like. And that's typically why you would take that money in, besides the points that the other folks on the panel have talked about.
Yeah, collective IQ is really important. When you can get a bunch of experts in this area who've done this many times with success and can cut down. When I was an entrepreneur and I raised money, I did it with people who could really help me get from A to Z in a quarter or half the time, which was really, again, all you have is time. Do you want to add to that, Uli?
Sure. So the other thing that venture capital adds is that it gives you a certain credibility, right? Which means that you are planning to scale this business. You're gonna make it really big. That's your goal. And if people have, tested it, did the due diligence, that means that there's some value in that company that people are willing to bet their money. So it does add some credibility.
Yeah, good question.
Say a business evaluation, where would you tend to look to see if there's any interest or your scalability if you had some sort of
So,
model? Where would you go to get advice on something?
yeah, so you're talking about where does one go to get advice on your business model and scalability and the opportunity to scale a business? Go ahead, John is the person.
SVB. I mean,
Yeah.
we have an early stage practice. All we do is we work with early stage funded companies, and we like to work with them, but we also just give advice. We review a lot of business plans. We talk with a lot of venture folks. So, as first blush perspective on, is this a market that a venture investor would be interested in? We can at least give you some perspective on that.
And I would also add real quick, if there is somebody that that's done it, or that you know of that's done it, or you've seen or you read about, you'd be amazed at how accessible people can be. Not necessarily sometimes in the professional area, sometimes not. But when I did my business, I called up, I was in a sort of legal tort area, and I called up the top tort lawyer in the country. I said, can I come talk to you? And he was like, yeah. And he ended up on my board. So I think it's a question, you can't have fear. You have to go out and you have to find that, and you have to get all the input you can. Lily, you want to add something?
Yeah, I would recommend talking to the person sitting next to you.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, everybody, for being patient. I know it's the afternoon, so it was hard, and you couldn't see as well on this side of the panel, so we appreciate you indulging and listening and being so patient and staying here for this wonderful panel. Let's thank our entrepreneurs and our experts.